Good to see everybody. Glad everybody was able to make it. A good turnout. Good turnout. Look forward to a productive gathering of the two bodies. We will now call the meeting of the Liberty County Board of Commissioners to order. Mr. Brown, has the meeting been properly advertised? All right, thank you so much. And the meeting is called to order.
We are readjourning our meeting. We had paused our meeting, and we're just opening our meeting back up.
Okay. Thank you.
So I think we're gonna, unless you have a question, we're going to
Yes, sir.
go with Glenda. Glenda has a lot of information for us today.
Okay, so I guess I'm talking loud enough for it to catch.
Do you want to, here's a microphone, I feel, like here. Do you want to come over here and talk?
I'm here. I'm good, I'm good.
Or you want me to, I can move
The
this?
good news is it'll record, in fact, switch the podium mic's gonna pick up too, so it'll be recorded twice.
Can you
Right.
just, for sake of, you know, how I am, just turn the podium?
This way? Sure.
You got muscles in there?
There we go.
There you go.
All right. That way I can.
Can you get back there? We can measure.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I can make it work.
It's gonna help you out.
Okay.
True.
There you go.
I won't. Okay. All right. So, the first thing that the Board of Assessors wanted me to do was to kind of bring you all up to speed on a little of what we're actually doing in our meeting. So, we're going to do a public service announcement that's going to go to the paper. Our notices will probably not leave or will not go out until next Friday. And the reason for that is because we had a little bit of a glitch that we found in our KDW calculations that we're having to go back and we're having to make some corrections. So that is ultimately going to affect the exemptions. Some up, some down, but we're kind of still working that right now. That's why my staff and I, we've worked the last 2 weekends. We did not work this weekend, but we came in some Sunday and we're working nights trying to get that calculation together. But as I pointed out at the budget presentations, we are, or have had to raise point cost on houses. And like I told you, the base point cost, the dollars per square foot that we currently are at, was at $55 a square foot. We've had to go up to $65 a front foot. And we're also making some minor land adjustments across the county. So we've not done a complete countywide reevaluation, but where it has dictated that we need to make adjustments to land values, that has been done as well. But in doing all of that, excuse me, just the increase in the base cost of residential properties alone, we're seeing roughly an 18% increase just on residential properties. On top of that, when you look at the overall right now, our gross digest is about, at this point, this is not the net digest, we're looking at about an 11% increase over and above last year's digest. So when we actually run numbers, and before I run what the KDW calculations are, right now we're probably going to end up being somewhere in the neighborhood of about a 15% increase in digest numbers, even with the exemptions that have grown. The Freeport numbers that are not final just yet, I can just tell you that. Our Freeport numbers went from $409,435,422 in 2021 to $444,809,306 for this year. So that's an increase of $35,373,884, which equates to an 8.2% increase in the Freeport exemptions this year. There are some that that number is probably going to change slightly, simply because of the fact that we are still, there's some that there had some differences in what they presented, and so we're going to have to go back and make those corrections. But basically, that was just a quick overview of where we are, and like I said, we are going to do an article in the paper so that we can notify persons, the taxpayers, because they are going to see an increase. And then, of course, with you all doing the millage rate process coming forward, that kind of gives you an idea of where we are. But there is, I mean, we had to, there's no way, because if we did not, we're in a situation where we were going to get slammed by the audit department and possibly find ourselves in a situation where we get a per parcel penalty. And so that's the reason for the increase. I know that's what we're going through in our meeting today. I believe our mapper told me that last year we had about 3,500 sales, which wasn't really typical for us, but especially during COVID, that was kind of unreal. So the number of sales really, really increased, and that's because, like I said, as you're riding through the county, you see many, many new subdivisions that are popping up. So that kind of gives you the overview of that part.
And something I wanted to mention is, before I was on the board, I did not know how heavily regulated this board is. I'm sure as the county commissioners you are as well, but we are heavily regulated in what we're allowed to do. And we cannot go outside those regulations or the county gets a big fat fine, and we don't want that either. So when we come up with these values, as a board, we don't like to raise the values per se. But again, if we don't, then if we fall, there's a ratio that they come and check every single year. And if we come outside of that ratio, there's big trouble. So that's what we're going through now, line by line, to make sure we're staying within those ratios. So we're trying to make sure taxpayers don't get hit too hard, and that's where the millage rate comes in. And the property values are within a line of the sales, because they have to be.
Doing it incrementally, like you just explained this year, trying to not overburden, if you will, the taxpayers. Do you see us coming back again next year and do another incremental increase?
Possibly, because now what we are facing, unfortunately, because we had that high, there's a lot of foreclosures that are taking place. And what's happening with the foreclosures, unfortunately, the foreclosures are being sapped up by people that do not live in this community. So even in the foreclosures, they're paying more because they want that property than normal. Now, as I mentioned briefly, and hopefully we will find out some more, we leave to go to our legislative session next week in Athens. So there has been talk about a statewide moratorium that took place back in 2009, if you all will remember. And hopefully we will get some more information as to whether or not the state's going to do that, because there's got to be something to regulate. And I think it was asked during the budget presentations, is this happening all over? Yes, it is. It's happening in pretty much every place in the state. Every county is facing this, the up and down and not knowing what to do, and whether or not we're going to have a big dip next year. So a moratorium would kind of allow things to kind of level off, but we just don't know if that's something that the legislatures are going to do.
You hear about that ACCG, about a moratorium? Something needs to happen.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, whenever you mentioned I think it was item A, is that real growth or is that included in here? The new
Yes, ma'am. That's everything. That's
would be
real
going up
and inflationary
roughly-
growth. So
roughly
that,
15%.
yes, ma'am. So that includes real and inflationary growth. So once we get final numbers and everything, we will be able to identify the percentage of real growth versus the percentage of inflationary growth. And so for the benefit of some of my new people that are here, what we mean by inflationary growth is anything that affected a change in value that was existing, and we're making changes. That's inflationary. Real growth is actually just what it says, anything that's new construction, they may have placed new improvements to the property, outbuilding sheds and things of that nature. So that's the difference in the inflationary versus the real growth.
Do you see that as a increase from last year?
Definitely.
As we see more build-up
Definitely.
going around?
Yes,
in
ma'am.
Oh,
the
yes.
county that it's
Definitely.
increased in? Okay.
And a lot of these folks aren't from here. We're getting
Right.
a lot of people from up New York, Jersey, people that are
California.
they're selling a quarter of an acre for $600,000, come down here, they think this is a great deal, and they're buying a house that would not bring that much normally. And now they're setting a market that's much higher. These jobs down here aren't moving with
And
the
then-
people that are coming from here.
And now I was speaking to a lady at the hair salon, and I was talking to a couple of our, friends that are, live in the county about how things are going, and the lady spoke, and I said, a lot of people are moving in from other states, like California, New York, where the property's so much more valuable, and they move here, it's because they don't have to work from a location any longer. They can work from home, and that's changed a lot with COVID. A lot of companies are no longer requiring you to, work in an office, you can work from anywhere with a computer. And this lady spoke up and actually said, "That's me." She said, "You're talking about me." And, we drew her into the conversation that she had moved from California and she was now working from home and she had got a great deal on a house. And, I'm sure she paid more than what a local person would have been able to offer. And again, our salaries are not necessarily matching what they're paying in California and New York. So it's interesting.
Chair, Ms. Wright.
Yes, sir.
Let's go back to that Freeport.
Yes, sir.
Run those numbers again.
The Freeport numbers, as we currently sit, the Freeport grew. Last year, we were at 409,435,422. And this year, currently, we're at 444,809,306.
And what percentage of increase is that, Ms. Robinson?
8.2%. And so the difference between those two numbers is 35,373,884. So that's that much more of an exemption that will come on to digest for this year.
That's a large number, isn't it?
Yes.
Can you explain, when you say exemption, what is included in that?
So under the Freeport exemption, it includes the inventory of manufacturing businesses. Their raw materials or goods in process and things that are held in this state for less than 12 months. The other exemptions, we see an increase every year in just our basic homestead exemptions. The one that you see the largest growth in every year is the disabled veterans exemption. And basically, those are the two numbers, but the Freeport exemption is really what draws that every year. And I get it, that's what draws businesses to our community. So it's kind of like a catch-22, because the flip side of that, which I don't want to digress too much into that, we are, as a board, I've got to inform them of some other information. One of the things that's happening is there is a delay in the information that we're getting or should be getting from the industrial authority. For instance, Tire Rack Corporation. Normally, what we should be getting is we should be getting a lease agreement, and we should be getting information as far as when these leases begin and when they're ending and when they're anticipated to come on the tax digest. So in the case of Tire Rack, right now, Tire Rack actually should have come on the tax rolls in 2019 as a taxable entity because their agreement with the industrial authority ended. We don't have lease agreements. We don't have a schedule of when these agreements are going to end. So we were just recently contacted about putting Tire Rack on as a taxable entity. So as you can see, for 19, 20, 21, that should have been a taxable entity that the county has not received tax dollars. Typically, we don't go backwards because we don't harm the property owner. And so that just kind of puts us at a disservice if we could get the schedule so that we can reach out to the companies when they're due to come online to become taxable. We can reach out to the companies and let them know, look, we understand that your agreement with the industrial authority has come to an end, and we can start that process to get that paperwork. But it's just, I think there's a disconnect there that we're just gonna have to work out, because now we're 3 years behind on a property that should have come on the tax rolls, but we didn't know. There's just no way for us to know.
Just to your board, Chairman, you on the industrial authority, what can be accomplished to improve this communication?
I was gonna ask, has there been a historical disconnect, or is this something new?
It has been historical.
Historical.
I mean, that's just, it's unfortunate, it's been historical. What Mr. Davis is working out with us, we are trying to collectively work together so that we can get a schedule of every lease that the industrial authority has, and give us a schedule of when they went into their agreement, and then we can maintain that schedule of when their anticipated date to drop off or become taxable. Liberty County is a 100% Freeport County, so we don't do increments. they will continue to be able to benefit from their Freeport exemption. But what's happening, the equipment that is leased to those companies by the industrial authority for most of the time, 20 years, at the end of that 20 years, they should be coming online to be taxable, and we're losing those tax dollars because we just don't know. So Mr. Davis and I and Ms. Holliday, we've been working together, trying to get that schedule on board so that we can go through, because there may be some other companies that are out there that should be online, and we just don't know that. We just don't have that information.
What has been your conversation with Carmen or whomever you've been in communication with over there?
She's
If I
getting
may,
to it.
At some point in the past, we had better communication with the industrial authority, wherein any new company came in, they supplied us with a copy of the lease. Some of those leases are 20-year, and with the equipment and so forth, we had means that if it's a 20-year lease, then we had a choice of equating a 1/20th of the value per year until the time that the lease is finished. The other thing is the industrial authority gets 2 mills of taxpayer dollar each year. I think we need some accountability for that. We don't get lease agreement and all of it as we used to, and all of a sudden, at the end of the lease, no communication. And this is a big problem here. And when we talk about what's on the digest and so forth, I think the taxpayers need to understand that we don't raise taxes. We have to keep values where it is. Now, the governing authority takes taxable amount of digest and divide it into the M&O of the county and set a millage rate. We don't set millage rate, we don't set the taxes. I think that's one of the things we need to clarify.
Mr. Lovett, is there something, since you're on the authority, is there something maybe you could speak to someone and see if we can open?
You're working with Kelly, you said.
I am working with Kelly.
How's that going?
Slow.
What I was envisioning was, I didn't want to have you go back and redo what you've already done. A letter, Mayor Brown is the chairman, a letter to him expressing concerns and what you would recommend as an improvement, or correction, whatever the word is.
Right. Mr. Davis, I had a conversation with him actually last week, and he said that he would get with Ms. Cole, and because she said that she was kind of backlogged, so he said that he was going to take on the responsibility to try to get the copies of the lease and get those leases to us. But
That's been promised
Yeah.
several times, when nothing happened.
16.
All talk.
I still do a letter to Brown as the chairman and copy Ron Tolley on the letter. And copy me too.
I will.
And let's try to work it that way, because you're right. As much as I love Kelly, that could be an elongated process, so let's try to step it up some.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, here's something else to think about too. She brought up about the veterans exemptions. Are you aware of how many get exemptions in Liberty County?
I just noticed that every
It's a
time,
tremendous amount, and we love our veterans. But we do love our veterans,
But
and
what I'm saying to that, with the property values going up almost 18% per parcel, the people that own them, those people are fixing to increase and endure a terrible burden, because right now, some of the subdivisions like Griffin Park over there, they're already paying over $4,000 on about a 2,000 square foot house. They're fixing to go to 18%. Gas just went to $4. I mean, at some point, we're way out of whack. I mean, you're talking, if everybody goes up 16% just on these new values,
just need to be aware, to see what we can do to,
well, she gave us good heads up at the budget.
that's exactly,
But now it's just a matter of getting the word out to the public. And I guess the saving grace, if you will, is that this is not just Liberty County. It's,
No, it's happening all over the state.
and you're right, it's a touchy subject when you talk about touching veterans.
No, no.
No, no.
And I do wonder, and this is,
I mean, that's state.
I would,
Yeah.
I would say we are more heavily, there's like 3 or 4 counties, I think, in the state that are more heavily hit by this because we have Fort Stewart and we have the hospital and the administration here, which we love. So I have to say, these are people we love.
Yeah.
But I was also wondering if when you're speaking to people who are our legislators, if there's some way we could, because that's a state regulation and law, if there's some way we could get a little help because we are so heavily hit by it. I mean, when we come to the meetings, it's usually page after page after page of exemptions almost every month. So, and again, love our veterans, want to do all we can for them.
Preaching to the choir.
And my point was, if the millage just stays the same, it's going up 16 to 18%.
Well, the millage can never stay the same from year to year.
It has to go like
But it usually goes
this.
up.
It's impossible because, as I said, the thing is you take your M and O of the county, divide it into taxable property and come up with the millage. We've got an increase this year. If the millage stays the same as it was last year, what's gonna happen? Taxes increase. We do not, the fallacy is, we're naming the Board of Tax Assessors. We do not assess taxes. We assess value.
They get
The governing
the fun.
authority assess taxes.
Right.
This is the thing that most people are
just get
confused
blamed.
about.
We just get blamed
We're
for it.
we're getting blamed for it. We do not
Y'all don't get blamed
assess
as much as we
taxes.
do.
We get blamed for everybody's taxes.
I
School
promise
board,
you.
city of Hinesville.
We
School
do.
board, the city, we just
I think it's everyone.
Hey, I promise
The
you.
governing authority.
Do y'all have any other questions that we could answer for you, or?
I want to maximize our time, I think.
Yes, exactly.
What's your next, so we can,
That's
If you
where
would.
the executive
The old
session.
simple
oh, really? That's
cliche,
it, okay.
the old simple cliche is a Coca-Cola doesn't cost 5 cents anymore. So if one person is buying that bottle of Coke, it's 5 cents out of his pocket. But if 10 of us are paying for that bottle of Coke, we divide.
So
That's where the millage comes in.
are we ready to go into executive session? Would you like to go into executive for you, and we'll go for our meeting as well?
Chair, entertain a motion to go into, out of rec session, to executive session.
Some moves, Chair.
Just pay, motion and second? Yes. All in favor, raise your hand. Executive
Same with
session.
our board?
Make a motion, we go into executive session.
Ayes? Okay, motion carried. We're in executive session.
We
We have to